Hey, Canada. This has been Freakley, head of mental performance with the Toronto Blue Jays, and this is the Walk Off Podcast with Scott and Adam.
Hey, this is Jimmy Van Ostrand, mental performance coach with the Toronto Blue Jays, and you're listening to the Walk Off Podcast with Adam and Scott.
Nice. I love what you guys are doing. This is so cool, man. Hyping up our guys and getting the word out about our minor league guys too. So we're Jimmy and I, the team, we'll support you guys. Let us know what you need.
Absolutely thrilled to be joined by today's guests. We have with us Major League Mental Performance Coach for the Toronto Blue Jays, Jimmy Van Ostrand. Welcome to the show, bud.
Thank you. Thank you.
We are also joined by the head of mental performance for the Toronto Blue Jays, Ben Freakley. Glad to have you. Welcome to the walk-off, gentlemen.
Thank you, Scott. Thank you, Adam. We're excited to be here.
Right. So when people ask me the question, how many mental performance coaches does it take to screw in a podcast? The answer is 2.
Well, if we had the rest of the team here, Scott, the answer would be 5. But today we'll go.
Yeah, we'll work with 2. Right on. So I know we touched on it, Ben, before we hit record there, but how's the spring been going for you, gentlemen? I can imagine after the last year, 2020, that having everyone under one roof has been kind of nice. Yeah,
we actually strategically, everyone was not under one roof. We, with the way that the landscape of baseball now, all the major league guys came in and clearly that's the priority. So their work was done. And then when they rotated out, our minor league guys rotated in. And so there's been some really strategically set windows where priorities around development and preparing for a competitive season have been put in place. And those protocols have really helped us, maximize the time that we've had in our new facility, which you and I were talking about before we went live.
Yeah, it's pretty phenomenal. So for those listening right now, let's start simple, gentlemen. With what is behind the mental performance department. We'll maybe start with you, Ben, and then Jimmy, feel free to jump in and elaborate if you have any thoughts on this. What are you striving to accomplish with this department, and what was the reasoning behind its inception?
2 great questions. So let me back up. I'll answer the second part first to the best of my ability. So I think it was around 5 or 6, probably 6 years ago when Dr. Angus Mugford came over, and he from IMG as the director and now the vice president of high performance. So Angus brought with him a philosophy of a really integrated approach, interdisciplinary approach, and a highly collaborative approach, putting the player right in the center. And so now in our high performance department, we have resources that are athletic training, physical therapy, sports science, strength and conditioning, athletic training, nutrition, and mental performance. So you've got resources and people that are educated in those different disciplines that are really coming together to help have a shared understanding of the player. And when Mark Shapiro came to the Blue Jays, Angus was one of the people that he brought in. And, Mark made it clear, and he's made this clear several times, that this is a resource that he'd like to have available for players. He set that up and initiated a lot of that with the Indians. Certainly saw the value in it here. And when I was fortunate enough to get to lead this department, 2019 was the first year that we started talking about our philosophy. And I think the main thing that I want to get across to you, Scott and Adam, is that we're highly needs supportive in our approach. Our opening line of our philosophy when we talk to players is, hey, we believe that you're the expert on yourself, which means you've got the best idea of what's gotten you this far from a mindset perspective, what you feel like you need from a mindset perspective, what makes you great from a mindset perspective, what you do to get into compete mode. We want to honor all of those things that are already there. Rather than tell a guy, this is what you need or this is what you should do, we're really athlete-centered our approach, that we want to treat a guy as the expert on ourselves. Then we follow up with this. We believe that elite performers can regulate their attention and their emotion under pressure in any circumstance. So that's kind of like our philosophy is, like, when you look at people across all domains, when the pressure is on, do they know how to regulate their attention? Can they really focus in on the things that matter in that moment? And can they regulate some pretty big emotions around those moments as well? How does doubt, how does fear, worry, confidence, how do all those things come into play? So our department, we love getting together with each other and with guys to be available to talk with them about that. And those are some of the, I think, the big points that we wanted to get across today. VO, do you want to add on anything to that?
No, that's great. I think Ben nailed it with it. And I think the whole really cool concept of what we do is we spent a lot of time developing and having a framework that we work from. You know, it starts with the players being experts on themselves, and then their ability to regulate attention, emotion under pressure in any circumstance. And we put together a framework that we can work with for each player and how do they do those things. So we'll probably get into it a little later, but acceptance and commitment therapy is sort of the hallmark or the framework of a lot of what we do. And then we combine that with some classic sports psych skills. But I think the really cool thing is we have an understanding in sort of what we do and how we do it. And then the way it gets filled in, or the way that looks for each individual player, might be a little bit different. But the language that Ben and myself, John Lannon, Rob DiBernardo, Matthew Galvez can speak to each other is very consistent, is very clean. And then the language that the players take and use from that, we want them to have it in their own words and things that are meaningful to them. So yeah, I think Ben summed it up really nicely there.
So a lot of open lines of communication, obviously, right?
Definitely.
Yeah.
You know, I think anytime there's so many moving parts, right? You have a player development as a whole, which is all the coaches and staff on that side. You have the high performance department as a whole with everything going on. You have front office personnel, scouting, analytics, things of that nature that get in. Then you have all the players, and you have this interweaving of all these different disciplines, trying to make excellent individual players and team play for our Blue Jays organization. So that multiple lines of communication and being able to do that effectively is really, really important for us, for sure.
So how much of this is done one-on-one? Like, are you meeting with guys upon their request, or is it kind of performance-based? How is that unfold?
I think
We've had some awesome lessons learned along the way. And, you know, VO has done this work with the Mariners before coming to the Jays.
Okay.
So it's always fun to talk about, you know, what it's looked like. In early days, there was a lot of group delivery, and there is some value in that. You know, one of the models that, you know, that we kind of speak from is education, application, and support. So there have been times where things have been more group based, but going back to where our philosophy is now, with believing that players are the experts on themselves, that means that we really are going to be need supportive, and the one-on-one work, guys can come to us. They can schedule that with us. I'll give you an example. In the minor leagues, this year, Monday, Wednesday, Saturday, we offered an optional group session for guys around some of the skills and the curriculum that we're going to get into later that VO referenced. And then Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, during that same block, that was open for individuals. Guys could text mental performance coaches. They could set up times anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes where the mental performance coaches are available to work with those players. So we have found, our model of delivery that seems to work and get player buy-in is that guys know that this is not something that's going to be pushed, but they certainly know that we are going to be available to meet them right where they are, whether that be face to face, or even if needed, we can do that by phone or Zoom, as long as the player knows that he's going to get what he needs when he needs it.
Anything to add, Jimmy?
No, I think that Ben nailed it right there.
That's great. It's funny because one thing I've noticed about just the world in general is that every industry out there is taking the brain a little more seriously than it's ever been taken, you know? And I'm a stand-up comic, and one thing that stood out to me was in 2019, I was hired to do a gold mine up in Timmins, Ontario, so north of Timmins there. And it's 3,000 camp workers, and they're all doing shift work. So mental health was something that was of great importance to this gold mine. And the one thing that surprised me, the lady mentioned to me when she brought me in to perform, was that she really had a goal of, she talked about community morale and kind of trying to raise the floor of the mental health through the group, right? Like kind of picking up individuals through the team type of thing. And I know you kind of touched on that there just a few minutes ago, right? That yes, you do one-on-one, you also do team stuff. How much is that community morale a focus for the Blue Jays right now? And what is the mental performance focus on when it is a team thing as a whole, like when you're going into those team talks?
I think with those things, you're always looking at the dynamics of a team, right? And you're always trying to keep a pulse on the team, and that can be connected to wins and losses. It can be connected to relationships between players on the team. It can be how the players are engaging with staff, and it's really really important because anytime you have additional stress in any of those areas, it's going to affect more than just the direct people involved, right? Because it is such a tight knit group. Similar to the example you were sharing, you're talking about people that are spending a lot of time together.
Mm-hmm.
That's how it is throughout the minor leagues and in the major leagues. You're having guys, they're spending 10 plus hours a day together on a field, plus add in travel, plus add in they're in different random cities. So when you're at the hotel or you're doing these different things, not as much right now with the COVID lifestyle and being a little bit more separate. But this is who you're spending a large amount of your time in and with. So when things are going really, really well and people are thriving and people are impacting each other in a really positive way, there's kind of a compounding effect on that, and it can really help. When things are challenging, everybody feels it that little bit more. But within that, I think we try and build up some of this resiliency and some of these skills to help to be able to navigate the adverse times, to teach skills, to be able to work through these moments, and then to be able to savor the good times as well and appreciate where we are and what we get to do and the opportunity that we have. And it's kind of that combination of doing those things again on an individual level and a group level, knowing that the group will help the individual and the individual can help the group. And it kind of goes both ways. So I think we always want a sense of the pulse on those individual interactions and the group interactions and how they play with each other. And if it's time to leverage an individual's positivity and how they can affect a group and how they can make us better, then that's what we leverage. And if it's time to lean on the team and bring us together as a whole and we're playing well, to pick up there's always a couple people struggling no matter how well your team is going, and help that team lift up those individuals that are having a more challenging portion of their year, because everyone's going to go through it at one point or another. But really, it's just kind of being aware of that interplay between the two and trying to maximize the effect to your advantage as much as possible.
That's really interesting. It's almost like you're trying to create a support system from within type of thing, right?
No doubt. I mean, these guys play a huge role in each other's lives. I mean, it's not stopping on the baseball field. They're the groomsmen at the wedding, and they're they're the people there that are the first text when somebody finds out they're pregnant and things like that. Like, these are extremely impactful relationships in each other's lives. And I think when we when we forget the fact that they are people and they're not just baseball players and commodities as such, we lose a lot of what makes this game so special and what makes the team sport and team dynamic so special. And I think that's something that's really cool about the Blue Jays organization as a whole, is this desire to understand the individual and understand the bigger meaning of the group. And, you know, our whole mission is to bring World Series championships back to Canada. And that's not just about, you know, being a Canadian and growing up in the early 90s when that was so cool. And that's when I fell in love with baseball. That's not just about the trophy. That's about the enjoyment that comes into people's lives. You know, everybody being able to go out to the bar during the playoffs and hang and talk about the Jays, and they're doing great.
Yeah.
They're doing terrible. You know, what are we doing with these moves? We got to do that. Like, that's beautiful, right? It's just increasing community. So I think we definitely look at that on our level within our team and how important that is. But it's cool to recognize also the part of the bigger Blue Jays community and Blue Jays family that we think is really important, and we try and help that as much as we can as well.
Very insightful. I know you kind of touched on it, Jimmy. Just, we're in the middle of a pandemic. I'm curious how active the mental performance team was in 2020. I can imagine the stress of a regular ball season can be a lot, but then you add a global pandemic, and then as if that wasn't enough, right? Political unrest in the U.S. was at the highest it's probably been in decades recently. It must have felt like a heavy year in your department.
There was a lot. I mean, it was definitely a pretty crazy year. I think one cool thing is the fact with our Blue Jays mental performance department is there is a group of us, so it's nice to have that group to lean on and to interact with and to navigate through it. So you don't feel, I don't think any of us felt like we were trying to solve this riddle on our own. But it was hard. I mean, the 60-game season felt every bit as challenging and long and burdensome as any other 162 or 140 game minor league season that I've ever been a part of. And I think that just spoke to the added layers of stress that everyone's dealing with. You know, baseball at this level, minor or major leagues, is extremely challenging and brings about a lot of stress. And then you deal with everybody dealing with what we're doing with COVID and the uncertainty and the way that can affect health and or livelihood and or family dynamics, things of that nature. It's just a challenging period for everyone. And so there's no question that 2020 was a very, very unique and tough year. And, you know, still, even with some of the protocols that we have in place, it's definitely, we're not there yet.
Yeah.
You know, we're not playing at home yet. But it's, you know, I think as we continue to go through this, hopefully you get a little bit better at managing the things and, you know, understanding what's in your control and what's not. But it's a constant thing that we're trying to manage as best we can.
So I know, Jimmy, Ben mentioned that you started with the Mariners. You came from Seattle there. How prevalent is the mental performance side of things in Major League Baseball right now? Does every organization have something similar to what you guys are doing at this point?
It's growing. I would say, and Vio, you can check me on this, I would say almost every team has at least one resource, with the exception of maybe one or two teams. Multiple teams have many resources. Jimmy mentioned, you know, we have, besides the two of us, we have Rob and John and Matthew. The other thing that I think is you know, irrelevant to add, Scott, is that we also have a clinical mental health counselor who's our director of employee assistance program. He's an in-house guy. I think all of pro sports has shown us, you touched on this, Scott, that you know, globally more and more people are speaking out around mental health. And what I'm really proud of to be a Blue Jay is that we have literally about every resource that a player could need. And so if there are things that are less on-field based that fall into Jimmy's skill set, the skill set of our team, we know we can refer. We've got a great relationship with Sam Lima, who's our EAP director, and he does the counseling work. And so I think that that's something that, Major League Baseball is doing an increasingly better job of, I would say, across the board. One thing I want to go back on real quick to touch on that Jimmy said, around the community and the environment, and your story of when you spoke to the miners. We also collaborate and communicate regularly with all the managers across our organization, major leagues down to minor leagues. And so one of the things that you would find us doing in those moments, if we were to have more of a group wide conversation, that's going to be highly collaborative with the manager, to make sure that the messaging is kind of consistent. We're getting insight from him. And so our best programs are done when they're co-delivered, when we're collaborating with our managers, with our staff, to really have kind of a collaboration around the message that's getting shared. So I think that's an important piece, and part of our department philosophy on how we roll is that, we're not going to go in lone wolf and say, hey, here's a group discussion. This is what you guys need. A lot of that's going to be sitting down with managers and our player development staff saying, hey, what are you guys seeing? What do you think would be helpful? And even offering them off a lot of times because of their experiences. Jimmy nailed it. They've been in the game. They've experienced a lot of the things that the players are experiencing, and harnessing that wisdom and giving them a chance to tell their story as well and their perspective. That's part of our approach as well.
So obviously you can't speak on every organization, but I'm curious because I'm really impressed with how important the communication is, the messaging, that it's all across the board. You're saying the same things, type of thing, giving the same message. Would you say the Blue Jays are maybe a little bit ahead of the curve on the mental side, the mental performance side of things across baseball? You can toot your own horn.
I just know that there are a couple teams out there that have also really prioritized this. I can speak to the people that we have on this team. I think are world class. Jimmy represented Canada in the Olympics. Like, how cool is that?
Very.
And we've got John Lannon that played parts of 8 years in the majors. And I think when, you've got Rob as well, who Rob spent, 15 years coaching college basketball. I think I might have my numbers off a little bit on that. And then you have Matthew, who's right out of grad school. And I can speak to the fact, Scott, that the diversity of experiences on our team. One of the things that I think is so cool, where we might be ahead of the curve, is that particularly with Jimmy and John, you have two guys that have experienced so many things in the game of baseball, and on top of having really good careers, they also went on to get master's degrees in sports psychology on top of it. Wow. And I'll let Jimmy speak about his why and what that means. But I think one of the things that is so cool about our team is multiple perspectives. When you get our team in a room and we start to talk about mindset, when you start to talk about mental toughness, when you start to talk about competing or what it means to bring a championship back to Canada, and then you get Jimmy's perspective, who played for Team Canada and grew up being a Blue Jays fan, and you get John's perspective, who's been a major leaguer, and you get Rob's perspective, who's been a coach, right? You get Matthew's perspective, who's got a multicultural perspective around this. Man, we've had some really, really deep conversations, and I really feel like those are some iron sharpening iron moments where we get multiple perspectives, and I think together that informs a better curriculum, and it makes us better as coaches for the players. I'm going to shut up and let Jimmy add in on anything with that.
Yeah, I think the thought that comes to mind, there's a story that I really, really like. So Doc Rivers, when he was with the Celtics, when they were winning championships, they had a phrase that was the Lakers practice two. And the concept was, that the Lakers Celtics was that rivalry at that time. You had the Kobe Shaq Lakers, you had Garnett Pierce, and who else was on big three? I'm blanking. But anyways, you had this unbelievable rivalry, and the thing that the Celtics said was the Lakers practice too. And the whole concept is that just because we go out here and we work hard, or we run our drills at practice, or we do whatever we do, there's another extremely talented groups of individuals 3,000 miles away that are doing the exact same things. Can we bring the detail and the effort and the consistency to our work so that when it comes to game 7 of the NBA finals, we can find a way to get it done and put on that ring. And from our mental performance department, you never know, right? There's too many variables. There's too many anything to be like, this is better, this is worth, this is whatever. But I do think that we have a group that is extremely committed to helping our players develop as much as possible, to helping our teams develop as much as possible, and bringing, energy, effort, detail, commitment to what we do on a daily basis to do it to the best of our abilities. And we hope that by doing that really, really well, we are bringing a competitive advantage to our players and our teams. And that's the whole intent. That's why we're playing, sports at the highest level is to try and win championships and try and help guys put up the numbers that they want to put up. So that's just the one thing that comes to mind with me. I mean, you never know really what other people are doing, right? You don't really have a firm. You've got ideas and you can see things, and there's definitely some teams and some individuals that are doing tremendous work in this area for other teams. There's no question. But I think that for us, for me personally, like that, just that mindset of like, they're doing stuff too. It's on us to do the best things we can every day, day in, day out, to try and give us the best chance. And then, it's the guy, none of us are getting a hit. None of us are making any outs. It's all about the in between the lines every single day, and getting after it. And really it's on those guys on how it all plays out.
That's great. Collaborative effort. Love to hear it. So I'm very curious. It's funny because honestly, guys, one of the things that stood out to me as a kid about baseball was the slumps, right? Because in hockey and basketball, the other sports that I followed very closely, consistency was so important. But the one thing about baseball players, the season's so long, it doesn't matter how good guys are. Every single player, every single year goes through slumps. So I'm very curious, what are your thoughts about slumps and how players should be attempting to deal with them?
I'm going to butcher this quote, but I think it's slumps are like a soft bed, easy to get into and hard to get out of. I know that's from a baseball player, and I'm going to defer to. I mean, we certainly have some mental performance strategies around that, but I'm going to defer to Jimmy because he's experienced that.
I think the number one biggest things when it comes to, slumps or things of that nature is just like, what is success, or how do you define success, right? And, it's so funny. You can watch MLB Tonight, right? And they're like, oh, so-and-so's in a 2 for 16 slump. And it's like, no, he's actually hit 4 balls hard and done this, and it's 3 days. Like, and
Yeah.
but that's the nature of the beast. So if you want to check Instagram, check ESPN, check TSN, check Sportsnet, check all these, like, somebody's going to be 2 for their last 12, is that really bad? Is that really good? Like, who? So I think with slumps and how inconsistent the nature of this game is, especially from the hitting side, because naturally you're not going to get a hit as much times as you will get a hit. So just from the hitting side. And then the other group that jumps out to me are relief pitchers, because they're living such a fine line. Like, if you give up a run on any given day, that's a failure essentially, for most of those guys.
Yeah.
So it's like those two groups jump out to me. So now you're talking about 21 of 26 players on your roster, right? And it's they're living a life where if you are just fully locked into how those results play out, it's going to be a huge roller coaster ride for you. So then I think once you pull that back, it's like, okay, what are the things that I know over time are going to allow me to perform to the best of my ability and give me the best chance of achieving those results and those numbers, because they do matter, right? How many hits you get, what your average is, what your OPS is, what your ERA is, what your expected ERA is. We got tons of numbers now, but those numbers do matter. The results do matter, but they don't show up day in, day out the same way as it would for a basketball player or something like that. You know, you're not shooting a layup and all of a sudden the guy can like just poke it up from under, like that's goaltending. We got a rule against that. But in baseball, you can line out to center field and there's a person standing there. You know, golf, you hit a shot, it winds up on the green. Great. Somebody else can't come up and kick your ball into the water. Like baseball's pretty much got these types of equivalents where it's like pitcher executes a great pitch, gets it in, shatters the guy's bat, and it floats softly in the outfield for a hit, right? So I think by nature of just understanding what you're up against, that helps you. And then being able to take it back to some things that are a little bit more in your control. And what about your process can you commit to? What about executing your pitches or executing your game plan offensively, or just a reminder of those things? And then just staying the course when it's right to stay the course and making adjustments when it's right to make adjustments. And the line between understanding when and how to do that is tough to figure out at times. But that's really what it's all about, you know, maintaining a consistent, tough mindset through all of those things. Now it's a lot easier said than done, right? When you're 2 for 40 and someone's saying just, you know, get a good pitch to hit, take your time, see the ball well, drive it back through the middle. Like, okay, well, these dudes are throwing 96 miles an hour with ridiculous movement on pitches and whatever. You know, it's so easy. Like from the dugout, you never chase a pitch, right? Like, it's like, how does he swing at that pitch? It is unbelievable. That slider in the dirt, I promise you, for 56 feet, it is in the exact same spot as that fastball that ends up right down the middle. So all you armchair quarterbacks at home that are saying, like, there's no way you can ever swing at that pitch, it's literally the exact same thing, right? Like, these guys are so beyond gifted that I wish more people had an opportunity to understand how freakish and how hard what it is they do on a daily basis. Because I think it would give a better appreciation for just how special these guys are and what they bring. But you know, that's really what it's all about, is just how can you attack this day? How can you prepare really well? How can you get yourself in the box or on the mound with a clean mind, with a clean focus on what you want to do and how you want to do it? Stay present in that moment and then execute to the best of your ability. And the numbers will be what the numbers are going to be at the end of the day. And you're just trying to give yourself the best chance to do that. And that doesn't change if you're going really, really well or if you're going really, really poorly. It just gets a lot harder to do typically when things aren't going your way quite as much. It gets pretty easy to worry about a lot of other things that go along with it. And that's a huge part of the challenge.
I like that. Just the idea of perspective and being present in the moment, you know. We talked to Fitz Stadler with the Fisher Cats in their bullpen there on Monday. And it was funny. Like we've been lucky enough to talk to about 20 guys within the organization at this point. And one thing that's kind of stood out to us is like how advanced mentally these kids are, you know. And I guess to get to that point, to be a professional ball player, it is kind of the mentally toughest of the mentally tough that do that. But one thing that Fitz said that really impressed me, and we were talking about slumps, and you know, at the beginning of a season, the numbers can always be a little bit uglier. You need to look at what happened, you know, like he's had, I think he's pitched 4 innings and his ERA is at like a 25 ERA right now, because he had 1 inning where he allowed 4 runs and got 1 out, right? And he even brought up, he was like, you know what? I allowed 4 runs. We still won that game. The boys picked me up and it's my first time in AA. Things are going to be fine. And it was kind of cool to be like, you know what? Like that is perception, or like, you know, like perspective in its best right there. It's kind of cool to see how prevalent that is up and down the system. So well done on your guys' part in a lot of cases, I guess.
Well, you know, if I could jump on what Jimmy said, that there's a great quote in a book that we've recommended to players a couple times, and it's called Chop Wood, Carry Water. And there's a phrase in there called surrender the outcome. And I think a lot of times, you know, when any of us, any domain, whether it's baseball, basketball, anything, we can get myopic when the results aren't coming, and we can start to really, a big piece of this is wrapping our identity into these results, right? And so I think what Jimmy's offering, and he nailed it. Like, the longer I've been in baseball, the more respect I have for these guys in how hard it is to do what they do every single day. So, I think we're really cautious and respectful if we are invited into a conversation with a guy who might be struggling, in just being able to suggest or imagine or have him consider where the focus is right now. Is it on the outcomes, and how's that working for you? Or, as Jimmy said, is it on the process? And if so, tell me about the process. Tell yourself about the process. There's a lot of guys that will journal, that'll write down what it looks like when they're going well. And that can be a great source of confidence to be able to go back and remember, when I've done this, I've been there before. And results can cause us to get myopic. We'll wrap our identity up in that. But to be able to step back, get that perspective that Vio talked about, and really get locked in on that process. One of our phrases that we'll use from time to time is results are a byproduct of the process. And so it's got to be prioritizing the process and trusting that over time, and Jimmy said it, the numbers will be what they'll be. And Fitz backed this up. Hey, it's early days. The results will come.
I like the idea of do what you do and kind of ignore the outcome, because if you're seeing success with what you do, it's going to come again. I really like that outlook. I'm going to get in trouble here with our listeners if we don't get to some listener questions. I know you guys got to head out here in a few minutes, so we'll get right to it. So this first one is from Timothy in Charlottetown, PEI. He says, it's funny how players' mental toughness seems to accrue with age. Who are some veteran guys you can think of, either on the Jays or the MLB in general, with superior mental approach to the game?
Cool. I think there's a lot of good ones. The one who really jumps off the page for me with us here is Hyunjin Ryu. The guy is unbelievable in the way he prepares. He's unbelievable in how consistent he is on the mound, and he's unbelievable in just how he runs it back, pitch in, pitch out. When things go well, when a ball's hit hard, when there's a defensive miscue, when things are great, he's just so consistent in everything he does. And, for me, that's what mental toughness is all about. And for us, we talk about psychological flexibility with mental toughness. Is you have these different skills that, regardless of the situation, you can navigate it in a way that is effective for you and for what that moment needs and dictates. And, you're talking about a guy that isn't the top velocity of, baseball, for really quality pitches, really, really good above average pitches. But it's not just blowing you away, but his ability to add, to subtract, to move in, to move out, to move up, to move down, and do it game in, game out with an understanding of what he does, an understanding of what the hitter does, know how to leverage those differences, and think in a major league environment in time at that level. And I think, he's one that having the opportunity to be around him and watch what he does on a daily basis to allow him to be an ace in this league, he's phenomenal.
That's great. Thank you for the answer here. We'll get to one more question, and maybe, Ben, you can field this one if you'd like here. Jason out of Thunder Bay, Ontario says, hey, guys, so cool you're joining the show. I've always wondered the psychology behind the yips. What do you know about the yips and how to fix it once a guy has them? Yeah.
Thanks for that one, Scott.
You're like, don't say that word.
Well, actually, when I had not been familiar with that term at all. My first year in baseball, I got very familiar with it, and was reading up on different players and different coaches that had worked with players. And one of the things that really stuck out to me was that rather than calling it that, because even if it's suggested, a player could take with it, run with it, make, oh shit. Oh, sorry. I don't know if I'm allowed to say that.
Oh no, we're fine. Yeah.
I do have that. Right. And then, man, labels are so dangerous. But when you reframe that around, it's a challenge of attention. Maybe I'm putting my attention into some of the wrong areas. Maybe I'm putting my attention into some things that I don't want to happen. And maybe that's causing some tightness and some tension in my body. And then the ironic process, don't throw it there. Don't do this. That thing becomes a reality. So, yes, first of all, one of the things that we say is it's not a skill unless it holds up under pressure. We think mental skills are trainable. So our work around that would include a lot of consistency with the guy and really talking about what it feels like, exploring some of those emotions. I'm nervous, I'm scared, I'm convinced that I'm going to throw it here or I'm going to throw it there. And then really getting into some non-negotiables. What are some things that you can do, not think, not feel, but what are some things that you can do, even though your mind is telling you a very different story or your body is not wanting to go with you? You'll find from guys, they'll be able to reach back into the past about some things that helped them manage it before. And we might want to try and bring that slowly to the forefront. We also want to normalize that this is a thing that happens from time to time, but guys can coach themselves out of it. And we're going to be, again, that's another area that's really helpful working with the player development staff is when a player can communicate, hey, this is what I want to put my focus on. I need to do this. We call them non-negotiables. I'll do these one or two things. I'll take a deep breath. I'll see the catcher's glove. I'll take a deep breath. I'll see the pitcher's glove. Maybe we can introduce some cue statements that will help direct a player's attention, maybe away from their inner experiences and toward something that's task relevant in the game. Those are some of the ways that we would approach it.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Jimmy and Ben, for your time. Really appreciate the chat and all the best to you over the season.
Thank you, Scott.
Thanks, Scott.